What is up, Packers fans? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thanks as always for being here. If this is your first time, thanks so much for checking out the show. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. Those help the algorithm a ton to get other people's eyes on the podcast, which is always super helpful. Also, make sure to check out those Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube memberships. Speaking of which, huge shout out to Declan McIntyre, Mark Hodges, and Pack Attack Cast for becoming all new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube members. Appreciate you guys a ton. We've got a fun episode today for you. I'm going to be going over the roster locks. Who is a lead pipe lock to make this Packers roster? No matter what multiverse you go in, they are going to be a member of this 53-man roster. We'll go over that in just a moment. Before we get there, just one piece of news and notes. That is that Matthew Golden officially signed his, contract, his rookie contract. This is not anything noteworthy really whatsoever. This used to be a big thing, and it still is sort of a thing if you are a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals, because their franchise is just weird. And then the other thing is if you are a second round pick. Second round picks are a little bit tougher because every year it sort of takes one step closer to, like, all the first round picks are guaranteed, and now like early second round picks are guaranteed. So there's always this like level of like what level of guarantee are you going to get in the second round? There's always the bar that gets pushed at that stage. So right now we're in the midst of that, and the second round is where it always gets a little bit interesting. And that's why Anthony Belton is the only remaining Packers rookie who has not signed yet. Everyone else is under contract. It shouldn't take too long to get Belton's done. These are still pretty much formulaic when it comes to getting these deals done with a new CBA. But the second round is where there's still a little bit of haggling, and we'll see if Belton's gets done sooner rather than later. But Matthew Golden's is now officially signed, sealed, and delivered. As mentioned, today is going to be talking about 53-man roster locks. And this is always a perfect sort of time to do this because we're just getting into OTAs next week. And we're really kind of getting into actually the practice phase of the offseason, where we can start now tracking who's doing well, who's not doing well. That'll kick off next week. We'll get one practice usually that's open to the media. And then, of course, we're going to get another week of OTAs after that, and eventually a week of mini camps, and they might be out of order, but you get my point. We'll probably get 3 practices open to the media throughout that entire time, take that little break, and then it'll be training camp. And then we'll, of course, keep an eye on all of this stuff and eventually get to the true 53-man roster. But taking a look at it now gives us an idea of, again, what this core of the roster is, but also more importantly, where some of those roster battles are and who is going to be making up the group of players that really have to fight to make this roster. So we'll kind of go through all of that today. We'll run through it position by position. If you want a 53-man roster prediction, I've done a too early version of that already. You can check that out over on the YouTube channel, wherever you get your favorite podcast. But today, we're just going over roster locks. I will mention the players who are going to be battling for those spots as well. Let's start off right away with quarterback. 2 players, and actually, I take it back. One thing I want to go over before we get here. I can't predict trades, okay? This is simply they're going to be on the roster, or they're going to have to make the roster. They could potentially be cut. Anyone is theoretically tradable, to some extent, right? Depending on what the offer is and things like that. Those are tough things to predict. Could a player that is a lock now get some sort of trade offer from another team and Green Bay says yes to it? Sure. We'll talk through maybe some of those, but those again are much, much, much harder things to predict. So if a player could get traded, they're still going on the team as a lock. So meaning they're either a roster lock or they could at least get some compensation via trade down the road. That's where we're going with this. So quarterback, there are 2, Jordan Love and Malik Willis. Jordan Love is going to make the team. We know that. That is not breaking news. Malik Willis is the interesting one where you could theoretically, maybe in some multiverse, get a trade activity. I've talked about this multiple times this offseason. I don't see the pathway for that. I think Malik Willis is going to be far too valuable to Green Bay, where some team is going to have to give up some sort of really, I think, valuable draft commodity to pry him out of Green Bay. And I don't think any other team is going to say, yeah, we'll give a top 100 pick at this point. The Saints have already put something into Tyler Shuck, the Giants have signed or drafted like 4 quarterbacks at this point. You're maybe looking at Pittsburgh as the one team that's out there remaining where maybe they could do something. That's expected to be Aaron Rodgers. As of recording this, that is of course still not happened. But I don't think even the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Aaron does not go there and they can't get Kirk Cousins, I still don't know that they're going to be in the, I guess, realm of trading for Malik Willis or giving up something significant. I think they'd probably just run with something different at that point, whatever that is. I have no idea. But in all likelihood, it's just going to be Aaron, right? I can't find a pathway into Malik getting moved somewhere else. And clearly he's not going to get released. So to me, he is still in that lead pipe lock category. If some team's quarterback goes down, torn ACL, even then there's probably other quarterbacks that teams are looking at. But could you maybe get a phone call for Malik Willis? Sure. But for this exercise, 2 clear and obvious quarterbacks, Sean Clifford and Taylor Elgersma, will be fighting it out probably for a practice squad spot. But maybe if Elgersma just crushes it or if Clifford shows massive improvement, one of them could get on the 53. But in all likelihood, those 2 will fight it out for the number 3 quarterback job and a practice squad spot in Green Bay. Running backs, 2 are locks, Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd. Not breaking any news there again. You might have a affinity towards Emmanuel Wilson. You might have an affinity towards Chris Brooks and say Chris Brooks is going to make it or Emmanuel Wilson is going to make it. And both of them will have a real legitimate opportunity to make this team. But there is a world in which they could only keep 3 running backs. And if that's the case, you have quite the battle between Wilson and Brooks. And I honestly don't know what direction I would go in right now. If you said they only kept 3, Jacobs, Lloyd, and either Wilson or Brooks, I think that's about as coin flip as you possibly get in that scenario. Wilson, really good runner. I thought he improved as a pass catcher. I thought he improved as a pass protector. I really like Emmanuel Wilson as much as I really like Chris Brooks as well. I would lean towards Emmanuel Wilson in that scenario, but every team really can use a Chris Brooks too, who's good in pass pro, catches the ball in the backfield well, is a good runner, just does everything well. And those players have a ton of value. It just is like a number 3 running back. So I honestly don't know. Is there a chance they keep 4 and keep both of them? Absolutely. But could I lock either of them in the scenario where they only keep 3 and have to choose between the 2? I could not. And then, of course, Amar Johnson and Jalen White are the other 2 running backs, UDFAs. We'll see if they can make any noise. I really liked Amar Johnson's tape, but for now, only 2 locks, and I couldn't get anywhere near adding a third at this point in time. So Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, the 2 running backs. Wide receiver, I'm going with 5 with an asterisk. Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Savion Williams, and Dontavian Wicks are the 5. The asterisk, of course, is Christian Watson, who will start the season on the PUP list and will be out until he comes back later in the season. But Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Savion Williams, and Dontavian Wicks are all, to me, locks to make this team. Now, with Doubs, again, can we get into a scenario where there's a potential trade? Sure. That could be some scenario there. If Golden looks great, if Reed looks great, if Williams looks great, if Wicks looks great, and maybe they really like McCole Hardman, who they signed, and they feel comfortable with either Malik Heath or Bo Melton as that other guy, and they feel like Christian Watson's going to come back stronger and better than ever, yeah, there could be a world in which you potentially trade away a Romeo Doubs. I just don't think it's going to happen. I would personally keep him, and I think there's probably a very thin line that you would need to thread in order to make it to get to the actual Romeo Doubs trade, getting something in return, moving on from him, and actually seeing Goody, pull the trigger on that. I just don't see it. So I'm going to go with 5 that are locks. The only other one I'll talk about here is Dontavian Wicks. You guys know my affinity and love for Dontavian Wicks. I don't think there's anything that he could do. There would be like a 0.00001% chance that if he came to camp and just had a terrible camp, could not catch anything, was completely just, losing all the confidence in the world, and just, it was gone, right? Like he just lost it, almost like Amari Rodgers style. Maybe you could get to that point. This was the number 1 targeted receiver for the Packers last year. I don't think you're going to get from that to cut a year later, regardless of what's happened at wide receiver. I just can't see it. So Again, is there the slightest of slight possibilities? Maybe, but for all intents and purposes, he's a lock to make this team. So I'm going with 5: Dobbs, Golden, Reed, Williams, and Wicks. Again, Watson will start on the injured list. And then Malik Heath, McCole Hardman, Bo Melton, Julian Hicks, Jaden Janke, and Cornelius Johnson will all fight it out for a potential number 6 wide receiver spot if they keep one. They don't have to. You can probably get a couple of those guys back in the practice squad, but if they want to go with one of those, they certainly could. 2 tight ends who are locks: Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. No breaking news there. Ben Sims, John Fitzpatrick, Messiah Swinson, and Johnny Lumpkin will fight it out for what likely is one other tight end spot. This will likely come down to Ben Sims or John Fitzpatrick. I would put John Fitzpatrick as the slight favorite going into the offseason, but I do think that's pretty close to a coin flip. I think Ben Sims is a little bit more of the talented player, but Sims had a lot of opportunities last year to kind of step up and take that role and just couldn't do it. And at the end of the year, it was actually Fitzpatrick who was active and Sims who was not. And Fitzpatrick seemingly kind of took that role from Ben Sims. But tough to lock either of those guys in. You're certainly not locking in Swinson or Lumpkin. So only 2 tight ends who are for sure locks to make this team. Again, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. I'm going to go with 7 offensive linemen. I very much, and you guys know this, am vehemently against any offensive line trades in that top 7. Rasheed Walker, Sean Ryan are the ones that are talked about from time to time. If you want this team to go out and compete this year and have a chance at a championship or, go to a Super Bowl, etc., you have to have depth along the offensive line. It is a prerequisite. You're going to have injuries that happen there. You're going to need guys who can step in and protect. And to me, you have 7 right now, and trading one away would get you only to 6. And to me, that is not enough. Is there a world in which a John Williams, a Jacob Monk, a Travis Glover, a Kadeem Telfort looks so incredibly good that maybe it makes one of those guys expendable? Sure. I still would probably take the extra depth. You can just never have enough of those guys. And for me, with this team, knowing what their goals are, I would rather have that extra depth right now. Get your comp picks in the future for guys that might leave the team, which should be pretty potentially significant for some of those guys. I just have no interest in it at the moment. But I'm going to say Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, and Anthony Belton are your 7 locks to make the team. Other players that will fight for 2 or maybe 3 roster spots: Jacob Monk, John Williams, Travis Glover, Kadeem Telfort, Donovan Jennings, Tyler Cooper, Trey Hill, Brant Banks, and JJ Lippy. As far as guys like Monk, Glover, Telfort, John Williams, I can't get to the lock stage with any of those guys. John Williams is, I think, a really talented 7th round pick. I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to make the team, but he's a 7th round pick. Those guys do get cut, pretty often. Travis Glover, Kadeem Telfort, Jacob Monk, nobody really kind of stepped up and really made it that they were the next guy up. In the game, it was Glover, and then Glover got benched and it was Telfort. Neither of those guys played well. Jacob Monk seemed to fall out of favor by the end of the year and was not active for a lot of those games. I just can't get there with any of those guys as actual locks. I think there's going to be a true legitimate battle. I think it should be a fun battle, but I don't think you can lock any of those in as of right now. So 7 offensive linemen, which gives us 18 locks on offense: Jordan Love and Malik Willis, Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd, Romeo Dobbs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Savion Williams, Dontavian Wicks, Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, and Anthony Belton. 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and 7 offensive linemen that should be the core of this offense and all making the team for the Packers this year. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. Only 3 defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, that I think are locks to make this team: Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, and Carl Brooks. Clark and Wyatt are no-brainers. I can't get to a world in which, with some of the flashes and upside of Carl Brooks, that they would just flat out release him. I can't get there. His draft status and not taking a step last year would at least put it in the category of, like, if he had a really, 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 really bad camp, maybe. I just really struggle to see that happening. So I'm still going with him as a lock. Colby Wooden and Warren Brinson are going to have to fight it out with all the rest of the other players on this group. Now, you've got 3 interior defensive tackles in Clark, Wyatt, and Brooks, and you're probably going to keep at least 5. It's Wooden, Brinson, and then guys like Nasir Stackhouse is a UDFA, James Esther, Nesta Jade Silvera, and Keith Randolph. That's not exactly a super deep defensive tackle group. And they just spent a draft pick on Warren Brinson. And he was one of my favorite guys to watch on tape. If anyone was probably going to lock him in, it would be me. 6th-round picks are volatile. You never quite know what you're going to get. And there are opportunities, or there have been times in the past where 6th-round picks do get released. Do I think there's a massively, massively strong chance that Warren Brinson makes this team? Yes. But it is not a foregone conclusion as a 6th-round pick, and you do have to go out there and earn it. Colby Wooden will have a real shot at this as well. Jeff Hafley talked glowingly about him the other day and just kind of that defensive tackle group in general. But for me right now, I can only lock in Clark, Wyatt, and Brooks, although Colby Wooden and Warren Brinson are definitely in the driver's seat, with Nasir Stackhouse having a legitimate opportunity as maybe somebody you could beat out, probably Wooden in that situation, but maybe Brinson as well. And here's the thing, right? As much as I like Brinson, and I wasn't a huge fan of Stackhouse's tape, if Stackhouse is just better than Brinson, the Packers aren't going to be upset if they need to release Brinson but keep Stackhouse. They don't care that one was a 6th and one was UDFA. They're still both rookies from Georgia, taken either late in the draft or were a priority undrafted free agent. The difference between those two is very minimal. So it's not like, Brinson will have some added advantage there because he was a draft pick, but not a ton. And Stackhouse will have a real opportunity to try to earn one of those spots. But for me, only Clark, Wyatt, and Brooks are actually guaranteed to make this roster. Edge rushers, I'm going with 4. Rashawn Gary, LVN, Baron Sorrell, and Cullen Oliver. Oliver, I played with a little bit in my mind of like, is there a world in which this experiment as a undersized pass rusher just doesn't work out and they can't really find a spot for him at linebacker and they just cut bait early? I doubt it. I really doubt it. Like 5th-round picks are on that line of like, all right, if he's just terrible, we can admit our mistake and just kind of take our medicine and we can release the player, maybe try to get him back in the practice squad. But usually if you're a 5th-round pick or better, you're just going to make the team. It's pretty rare that any of those guys get cut, and the team's usually going to give you a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to try to put something together so they don't just waste that investment entirely. To me, he's on the team. And I think the fact that even if he doesn't cut it as an edge rusher or a pass rusher, you have the ability to try him out as an off-ball linebacker as well. I just think as a 5th-round pick with some upside, with some potential positional versatility, I can't see him going anywhere. Baron Sorrell as a 4th isn't going anywhere. And of course, LVN and Rashawn Gary aren't going anywhere. So 4 of those are locks. I couldn't get there with anyone else. You guys know I really like Brenton Cox. I think he's going to have a real chance to make the team. Kingsley Enagbare clearly in that conversation as well. He's been like legitimately a starter at times over these past couple seasons. And I do think with his new contract, he got bumped up with the escalators over $2 million. I think he's going to have to earn his spot on the team. This is last year under contract. And if he does in fact want to make the team and get an opportunity for playing time, he's going to have to go out and have a really good offseason. Is there a really good chance he makes it? Absolutely. But if there is only one spot between Brenton Cox and Kingsley Enagbare available, that would be very interesting. And I think there's a legit chance that Brenton Cox could win that. In fact, I would say Cox makes it over Enagbare at this point, mostly due to the contract, but there's a couple other things that play there. So I can't lock in either of those guys, and certainly Mosby, Deslin Alexander, and Jeremiah Martin are not in lock category. They're going to have to fight tooth and nail to try to get on the team. But to me, 4 edge rushers guaranteed: Rashawn Gary, LVN, Baron Sorrell, and Cullen Oliver. Also going with 4 linebackers: Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, and Tyron Hopper. Isaiah Simmons, Christian Welch, and Jamon Johnson will fight it out for likely one more spot, maybe 2. I think Isaiah Simmons is clearly the leader in the clubhouse there, bringing him over from New York. A lot of versatility, special teams guy. I think he's going to have the best opportunity, but I couldn't, based on his contract, get there as a complete lock to make the team. Christian Welch will have some say over that. He'll be able to show off his special teams prowess and also show off that he's improved as a linebacker. And then Jamon Johnson, one of the guys that they gave some legitimate signing bonus money to, or not just signing bonus, but guaranteed money to, and he'll have an opportunity as well. I think Simmons makes it as the 5th. I think Welch and Johnson will be practice squad candidates. But outside of Hopper, McDuffie, Walker, and Cooper, I couldn't get there with locks for Simmons, Welch, or certainly Jamon Johnson. Only 3 corners as locks. Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, and Carrington Valentine. That's it. Jair, we know, we sort of know the situation. And as of right now, again, we have no idea what's going to happen there. Could he be a Packer? Sure. Could he be traded? Sure. Could he be released? Absolutely. Like, we just don't know what that's going to entail. So very clearly, just by definition, not a lock to make the team right now. If they get the contract thing under whatever, like, figured out, then yeah, he is absolutely a lock to make the team. But just right now, where things stand, definitely not in that realm. Micah Robinson's a 7th-round pick. I think they like him. I think he's going to have a real chance, but not a guarantee. Kalen King, we heard some great things about. I think he's going to get a real opportunity to make the team. Kamal Haddon, same thing with him. Then you've got guys like Isaiah Dunn, Kazir Brown, Jonathan Baldwin. Baldwin got some pretty significant guarantees. I think it's just going to be a good old-fashioned fight for either those bottom 2 corner spots if Jair is back, or potentially 3 corner spots if Jair is not back. A lot of opportunity there, but not a lot of guaranteed solutions. That's why I think those spots are much more up for grabs. That brings us to safety. I really want to guarantee 5 here, but the truth is I can only guarantee 3: Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard. You have 3 other safeties on the roster: Katana Ladapo, Zane Anderson, and Omar Brown. I like all 3 of those players. My guess is they keep 2 more. They keep 5 overall, and Oladapo and Zane Anderson are just good to go. They're both going to make the team. But the thing I couldn't get out of my head is, what if they only keep 4 safeties, keep Javon Bullard at safety, and now that final spot's between Oladapo and Zane Anderson? I think it just goes to Oladapo based on upside, youth, those sort of things, and Oladapo can still play some special teams as well. But Zane Anderson, core special teamer, and looked really good on defense when he got his opportunity last year. To be fair, so did Katana Ladapo. I think both of those guys very clearly make the team, but I just couldn't quite get myself to lock either of them in, even though I do believe both are massively likely. Omar Brown, good player too. He'll maybe get his name in the conversation, but is probably going to need a little bit of injury luck from somebody at the safety position in order to get his shot, show himself, and maybe get out there, like, just on the roster as a 5th safety. Right now, it's going to be tough to make it as a 6th safety. So on defense, that brings us to 17 total players: Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Rashawn Gary, LVN, Baron Sorrell, and Colin Oliver, Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, and Tyron Hopper at linebacker, Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, and Carrington Valentine at corner, with Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard at safety. 3 specialists: Brandon McManus, Danny Whalen, and Matt Orzik. We can go in any direction with the Whalens and the Orziks. My feel on it is, if either of those players would have been under any duress, meaning that the Packers thought they might not make the team, there would be a punter or a long snapper in camp, and there just is not right now. And until that happens, I'm going to believe that they want to go into the season with all 3 of these players: McManus, Whalen, and Orzik. If Orzik just has a terrible camp and can't snap right, or Whalen has a terrible camp in preseason and can't punt right, could they go in a different direction? Sure. I just think the vast majority of outcomes here are that Orzik, Whalen, and McManus all make the team. So I'm going with all 3 in this scenario here. So 18 players on offense, 17 on defense, which brings us to 35, and then 3 on special teams, which brings us to 38. And I think this is kind of an interesting conversation in and of itself, because before the draft, people were like, oh my goodness, they can't draft all these players. There's nowhere to put them. Again, I have 38 out of 53 complete locks to make the team, and everything else is a little bit more up for grabs. Now, there are 24 players right now that I think are going to battle it out for those 15 remaining roster spots. Those players include Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, Malik Heath, McCole Hardman, Bo Melton, Ben Sims, John Fitzpatrick, Jacob Monk, John Williams, Travis Glover, Kadeem Telfort, Colby Wooden, Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, Kingsley Nigbari and Brenton Cox, Isaiah Simmons and Christian Welch, Jair Alexander, Micah Robinson, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, and Katana Ladapo and Zane Anderson. That's 24 players I just named. They're going to have to keep, or they're going to get to keep 15 of them, assuming there's no outside players brought in. That means you have to cut 9 of those players in order to get to 53. Again, Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, Malik Heath, McCole Hardman, Bo Melton, Ben Sims, John Fitzpatrick, Jacob Monk, John Williams, Travis Glover, Kadeem Telfort, Colby Wooden, Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, Kingsley Nigbari, Brenton Cox, Isaiah Simmons, Christian Welch, Jair Alexander, Micah Robinson, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, Katana Ladapo, and Zane Anderson. Finding 9 to cut is not going to be easy in that group. This team has good depth. They're very talented, but I'm going to go with 38 players that are complete locks to be 2025 Green Bay Packers, barring injury or barring some crazy trade. I'll go through it one more time. Quarterbacks Jordan Love and Malik Willis, running back Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd, wide receiver Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Savion Williams, Dontavian Wicks, with Christian Watson starting on the injury list. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave at tight end. Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, and Anthony Belton along the offensive line. Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, and Carl Brooks on the defensive line. Rashawn Gary, LVN, Barron Sorrell, and Colin Oliver at edge. Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, and Tyron Hopper at linebacker. Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, and Carrington Valentine at corner. Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard at safety, with Brandon McManus, Daniel Whalen, and Matt Orzik as your specialists. Again, 38 players, locks to make this team per me right here, right now. We'll see if when we actually get to the 53-man roster, if there's anyone that I missed on, and if any of those 38 locks are actually not on the team, not including injuries or potential trades. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. We'll be right back here tomorrow. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wayne, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Boom Handle, Donna Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Wong, Peter Ataka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Gessford, Dylan Patscott, SoCal Pack, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Jake Koner, Carlo Delgado, Willie Winklestinkle, Jen Wright, The Gable Storm, and Matt Geiger. I'll see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.